much bullshit.
Well, the thing is, we've seen so much more at this point, and there are studios doing it so much better.
It might be a little harsh to call it dog shit, but I'm gonna do it anyway. A living vampire in a lifeless movie.
That is one big pile of shit.
What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from The Quartering, and the reviews are in for Marvel's perhaps biggest flop in history. I don't know. Morbius. Now, the film itself is, has been delayed multiple times, and I think we now know the reason for that. And I also want to be careful in cautioning people from putting a little too much weight on critic reviews. This is, I think, the worst reviewed Marvel movie maybe ever. I'm going to have to actually look that up. But it's also only the critics. And I remember, the critics absolutely tanking Venom, and people really liked that movie. And there's a lot of times where critics really pan something and people just love it. So, am I sure? I am sure. I don't even have to ask the question. I am absolutely positive that there will be people that like this movie, people that really like the Morbius character, people that really like Jared Leto. These are people that, will probably like the film. But this is a huge embarrassment for Marvel, because last night it was trending and it was all negative, including people whose reviews I trust, not just like random shills. And if we look at it, review LA Times, Marvel's misbegotten Morbius is a colossal snore. You see, having No Way Home spoiled for you, boo. Having Morbius spoiled for you, happy, 50,000 likes. To Morbius, the Morbius post-credit scene being like random BS, go. Everybody is just completely dunking on it. Although the interactive Morbius poster is pretty cool, I think people said. I don't know if that is really cool. But that said, that's very expensive. They're spending a ton advertising this movie, but Marvel fans right now, after seeing Morbius, our expectations were low, but holy F. And if we look at where it's sitting at Rotten Tomatoes right now with 85 reviews in, it just went down right in front of my eyes. 92 reviews, it's sitting at a 16%. In terms of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I guess this is a little different because it's a Sony film, right? And, Sony's fresh off a massive success with Spider-Man No Way Home. But these reviews are actually really, really brutal. And they don't just seem like, they just seem like they hated the movie. I mean, it's not like, oh, there wasn't enough diversity, there wasn't enough this, that. It was just savage negative reviews. Like Nell Minogue writes, more like Morbius, am I right? The action scenes are poorly staged. The special effects are awful. Plus, it spends way too much time on the origin story, somehow without ever making us connect to its title character. Morbius' perfunctory, sloppy, paint-by-numbers attempt to remind audiences that Sony has the rights to these Spider-Man villains, and golly, they're going to use them. That's true. That is true. While the latest Marvel origin story features plenty of bats, it doesn't hold a candle to Batman. Well, yeah, figures. The dark adventure that gets darker as it goes. This might sound silly, but Morbius the vampire feels like he deserves better. I don't know what it is about Jared Leto. I don't have anything against the guy. He seems kind of like your run-of-the-mill wackadoodle, but he sure has a real penchant for being in terrible movies. I don't. It's him as Joker, terrible. Morbius, I guess, looking terrible. No harm to Leto, who wears less makeup as a vampire than he does in the human as a human in House of Gucci, but he appears to be taking a silly role absurdly seriously. It's simply not particularly interesting, and neither is his origin story. Morbius is a fellow tortured by self-inflicted curse, and his anguish is nothing compared to the pain this terrible movie inflicts on the audience. D-. It's like, I don't really, I'm not sure I could put a lot of faith in critics normally, but when they're in this much of agreement, if we look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a franchise, and we look at kind of how they movies review, this is definitely going to be the worst. By the way, side note, people seem to have liked the first episode of Moon Knight, although basically everything that starts out good on Disney Plus ends up going down the toilet. We saw that with WandaVision. We saw that with the Hawkeye series. Anyway, here you have Eternals, 47% from critics. I don't know if they even technically put this in the MCU, right? I don't think so. I don't think technically this is the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Certainly they're not putting it in there, but it is technically a Marvel property, I guess, nowadays. But it isn't in the MCU, so to speak, even though they put Spider-Man in the MCU. I wonder, you guys will probably tell me in the comments how that they differentiate that. Here's Inhumans, which was a TV show, got an 11%. I suppose that was worse. Marvel's Iron Fist got a 37%. But this is still 16%. So there really hasn't been. Now, again, can you put this all on Marvel? No, I don't think so. I think that this, Morbius is still kind of its own property. I'm not sure how Rotten Tomatoes actually qualifies it, but with a 16%, yikes. You have Columbia distributing it. It still says Marvel on the poster, but I have a feeling they're going to try to make it much, much smaller. Now, maybe this movie will turn out to be a fan favorite. Maybe fans will love it. Maybe fans of Morbius. I'm not like a huge Morbius guy. I couldn't care less about this movie. It's something I would probably watch like streaming for free once it was available if like people said the movie was awesome. But I wasn't in any hurry to see Morbius. But also, it brings up a lot of questions in an era of superhero flop movies. Yes, we saw Spider-Man set all sorts of records, and that shouldn't be diminished. But also, if we look at recent films that have come out, almost all of them underwhelming, starting with Black Widow, The Eternals, that stunk. The other movie, I mean, these movies weren't making money. I don't know what's going to happen in Phase 4 of Marvel and really for the future of superhero films. People still love Spider-Man, and I think they're going to see it. But I do think, hey, if they replace Tom Holland as Spider-Man, that will definitely ding it a little bit. He's not my favorite Spider-Man. Tobey Maguire is, but still, here this article in Forbes, Morbius post-credits reeks of desperation. They're even ripping the post-credits. Morbius has arrived to theaters in an eye-wateringly low Rotten Tomato score, canned by even hyper-enthusiastic first-look critics who love to oversell mediocre superhero films. Dang, who's writing this? Danny. Good job, bud. The film marks another stepping stone of sort of Spider-Man cinematic universe featuring the Sinister Six, something Sony has been desperately attempting to build since The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Post-credit scenes are often viewed as the most important aspect of any superhero films, which is sad, especially the underwhelming ones. And both Morbius post-credit scenes proved so notable that they were leaked online before being hastily targeted by copyright takedowns. Fans who have managed to watch the two scenes are not impressed, as the post-credit scenes attempts to merge Sony's sputtering cinematic universe with the MCU, creating several plot holes along the way. You could see, so the Morbius post-credit scene is interesting. So Morbius post-credit scene is just mind-numbingly stupid. Steven Spoilsberg writes, after hearing what the post-credit scenes for Morbius, no one can convince me that Sony didn't do the post-credit scene for Venom. Let there be carnage without permission. The first post-credit scene sees Vulture, played by Michael Keaton, inexplicably transported to the Venom Morbius universe, seemingly as a part of Doctor Strange's Fix-It spell from Spider-Man's No Way Home, which was intended to send multiverse characters. We already know. Vulture is soon released from prison, and there are no records of his misdeeds. The second scene is Morbius driving down a highway and getting out of his car to meet Vulture, who is now equipped with his high-tech jetpack suit. Again, this doesn't make any sense, as the universe doesn't actually contain the discarded alien tech that Vulture used to build his suit. Anyway, Vulture suggests he and Morbius team up to do some good, and implies that they're going after Spider-Man for some reason. Morbius agrees, finding the idea intriguing. Amusingly, the last time we saw Vulture, he was fiercely protecting Spider-Man's identity. Yeah, Vulture always knew who Spider-Man was, and never outed him. and hence has no reason to be angry at the web slinger, especially considering the fact that he just received a get-out-of-jail-free card. Morbius also has no reason to dislike Spider-Man. In fact, it's not clear if Spidey even exists in the universe. Regardless, Sony seems determined to will the Sinister Six into existence at the expense of Marvel canon. Considering how tightly controlled and perfectly calibrated the MCU is, it's pretty astonishing that Sony has managed to hijack it for its own ends, confusing fans of both franchises. The multiverse already has a complicated concept and is being muddied by Sony's desperation to build a rival cinematic universe. Well, I mean, I think normies don't really follow. 80% of the Marvel audience doesn't really know what's canon and what's not. Maybe that's too high. 60%? They just go for a popcorn film. And that's why those films got so big. Like, they're just, mindless action. They're forgettable. I guess you could say the end of Civil War was pretty memorable. Endgame, I guess memorable for different reasons. But you have, Morbius' review, Jared Leto's vampire Marvel movie is a toothless bore. Morpheus is a Marvel misfire that Matt Smith almost saves. Morbius reviewed Jared Leto in a vampire supervillain origin story that's neither original nor a good story. This is everybody. Morbius review, ludicrously pointless Jekyll and Hyde vampire monster yarn, 1 star. If you're a hardcore fan of Morbius, I feel bad for you. If this film isn't good, but you know what? There's usually something somebody likes about every movie. This one, I'll be interested to see how the audience score shakes out. I'm not really any interest in running to see. Oh, it's down to 15%. It just dropped again. So it dropped twice while I was doing this video. It's down to 15%. This is bad. Will the audience, save it? I don't know, but this is setting a very bad precedent going into it all. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll talk to you again real soon.